I'm Candace, 38 female. I live in a city where skylines are constantly changing, in a minimalist condo that I designed myself. As a senior architect, my entire life revolves around structure, precision, and building things meant to last. I thought my marriage to Julian was the strongest structure of all, a foundation I had meticulously helped build over 15 years, 10 of them as husband and wife. But I was wrong. A foundation built on lies is just waiting for the right tremor to collapse. And that tremor came in the form of a single, devastating charge on our credit card statement. My husband ignored our 10th wedding anniversary for a supposed work emergency. I later found out that his emergency had a name, a hotel room, and a price tag that would ultimately cost him everything he held dear. This is the story of how I stopped grieving the demolition of my marriage and instead drafted the blueprints for a revenge he would never see coming. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The scent of roasted garlic and rosemary filled our apartment, a warm, comforting aroma that felt like a shield against the chilly October air outside. I carefully basted the Cornish hens one last time, their skins a perfect, crispy golden brown. On the counter, a bottle of champagne, the good stuff, the kind we'd had at our wedding, was chilling in a silver bucket. I glanced at the clock on the oven, 7:30 p.m. Julian had promised he'd be home by 7 tops. We were celebrating a decade of marriage, a milestone that felt both monumental and wonderfully ordinary. 10 years. It was a lifetime, and yet it felt like only yesterday that we were two kids promising forever, completely unaware of what that word truly entailed. Our life was a picture of success, at least on the surface. Julian was a high-flying investment banker, a man who thrived on pressure and billion-dollar deals. I was an architect at a prestigious firm, finally leading my own projects after years of paying my dues. We had the beautiful condo with panoramic city views, the designer furniture, the life that our younger selves had dreamed of. But lately, the picture had started to feel a little faded around the edges. Julian's late nights at the office had become more frequent, his presence at home more fleeting. When he was here, he seemed distant, his mind perpetually occupied by stock tickers and market analyses that I couldn't begin to understand. I'd attributed it to the stress of his job. Investment banking wasn't just a career, it was a lifestyle that consumed you whole. I'd tried to be the supportive wife, the steady anchor in his chaotic world. I told myself this was just a phase, a rough patch that all long-term couples go through. Tonight was supposed to be the remedy. A quiet, intimate dinner, a chance to reconnect and remember the couple we were before our careers took over. I had even bought a new dress, a simple but elegant silk slip that I knew he loved. At 7:45 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Julian. "So sorry, babe, something huge just blew up at work. A deal in the Asian market. Have to stay and handle it. Won't be home till late. Rain check on dinner?" My heart sank. Not tonight. Of all the nights he could have picked to have a work crisis, it had to be this one. I typed back, my fingers feeling heavy. "It's our anniversary, Julian." The 3 little dots appeared and disappeared for what felt like an eternity before his reply came through. "I know, and I feel terrible. I promise I'll make it up to you this weekend. Big time, please don't be mad." I stared at the message, a cold knot forming in my stomach. Don't be mad. It was his go-to phrase, a simple request that always made me feel unreasonable for being upset. I took a deep breath, pushing the disappointment down. I was a supportive wife. This was his job. This was our life. "Okay," I replied. "Just be safe, I love you." He sent back a heart emoji. I placed my phone face down on the granite countertop. The silence of the apartment was suddenly deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. The 2-place settings at our dining table, complete with the good china and folded linen napkins, seemed to mock me. A dinner for 2 had just become a dinner for 1. I tried to salvage the evening. I poured myself a glass of the expensive champagne, the bubbles fizzing aggressively as if mirroring my own internal turmoil. I sat down at the table, the empty chair across from me feeling like a physical presence, a void that was impossible to ignore. I ate one of the hens, the perfectly cooked meat tasting like ash in my mouth. Every bite was a reminder of his absence. I thought back over the last few months. The missed dinners, the weekend plans canceled at the last minute, the way he'd started guard. Ing his phone like it contained state secrets. He always had a plausible explanation. A client emergency, a market fluctuation, a conference call with a different time zone. I had accepted it all because I trusted him. I loved him. The foundation of our marriage, I believed, was built on that trust. But as I sat there, alone in our beautiful home on our 10th wedding anniversary, the first few cracks began to appear in that foundation. I started to wonder if the long hours were the only thing keeping him away. It was a fleeting, ugly thought, and I pushed it away almost as quickly as it came. I was being paranoid, emotional. He was a dedicated husband who was also dedicated to his demanding career. He would make it up to me. He promised. I finished my glass of champagne, then another. The alcohol didn't numb the sting of disappointment, it only sharpened it. I cleared the table, carefully wrapping Julian's untouched dinner and placing it in the fridge. I washed the dishes, the familiar, mundane task doing little to soothe my racing mind. By the time I went to bed, the other side of the king-sized mattress was still cold and empty. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening for the sound of his key in the door, a sound that never came. The next morning, I woke up to the feeling of an empty bed. It wasn't an unusual sensation. Julian often left for the office before I was even awake, especially when he was chasing a big deal. But this morning, the emptiness felt different. It felt heavier, colder. The remnants of my sad, solo anniversary dinner still lingered in the air, a phantom scent of rosemary and disappointment. I rolled over and checked my phone. No missed calls. No texts since his heart emoji last night. I looked at the clock. 6:15 a.m. It was possible he had come in late and left early, a silent ghost in our home. I dragged myself out of bed and went into the kitchen. The plate of leftover Cornish hen was still in the fridge, exactly where I had left it. He hadn't even touched it. A small, bitter part of me hadn't really expected him to. I made myself a coffee, the strong, dark liquid a poor substitute for a good night's sleep. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows in our living room, watching the city slowly come to life. From 20 stories up, the cars looked like tiny insects, each moving with a determined purpose. I wished I felt that same sense of purpose. Instead, I just felt adrift. My phone finally buzzed around 9:00 a.m. just as I was getting ready to leave for my own office. It was Julian. "Morning. Sorry about last night. It was a complete madhouse here. Just heading home now to shower and change. I'll see you tonight, I promise." So he had stayed at the office all night. My mind immediately flooded with a wave of guilt. Here I was, moping and feeling sorry for myself, while my husband was pulling an all-nighter, working himself to the bone for our future. He was probably exhausted. I needed to be more understanding. "Morning," I texted back. "No worries, I get it. Are you okay? You must be exhausted." His reply was almost instantaneous. "Beyond exhausted. This deal is a killer, but it will be worth it. See you tonight. Love you." The guilt subsided, replaced by a familiar wave of supportive affection. I loved him. He was doing this for us. We were a team. I put the anniversary disappointment in a mental box, labeled it resolved, and tucked it away. My own job was demanding, and I needed to focus. I was overseeing the final stages of a new museum design, a project that had consumed me for the better part of a year. It required my full attention. When Julian came home that evening, he looked every bit the part of a man who had been through a corporate war. His usually sharp suit was rumpled, there were dark circles under his eyes, and he moved with a bone-deep weariness. He dropped his briefcase by the door with a heavy thud and pulled me into a hug. He smelled faintly of stale coffee and something else, a faint, sweet perfume that wasn't mine. I froze for a split second before telling myself I was being ridiculous. He had probably been in meetings all day with dozens of people, men and women. It was a lingering scent from a handshake or a shared elevator. "I am so sorry about yesterday, Candy," he murmured into my hair, using his old pet name for me. "I promise I will make it up to you. This weekend we'll go away. Anywhere you want. a little bed and breakfast upstate, just us. His apology felt sincere, and the promise of a weekend away was exactly what I needed to hear. "It's okay," I said, melting into his embrace. "I was just disappointed. I missed you." "I missed you too," he said, kissing my forehead. "More than you know." That evening felt like a return to normalcy. He was present, attentive. He asked about my museum project, listening intently as I described the challenges of designing the lighting for the main gallery. He complimented the simple pasta I made. "Eat for dinner as if it were a gourmet meal." We opened a bottle of red wine and sat on the couch, our legs tangled together, watching some mindless TV show. It felt comfortable. It felt like us. The doubts and anxieties from the night before seemed foolish and distant, a product of my own overactive imagination. I fell asleep that night feeling reassured, my head on his chest, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat a familiar lullaby. He was a good man, a good husband. He was just overworked. And I was lucky to have him. The next few days passed in a blur of work and routine. Julian seemed to be making a genuine effort. He came home at a reasonable hour every night. He called me in the middle of the day just to say hello. We started planning our weekend getaway, browsing websites for charming inns with fireplaces and four-poster beds. The anniversary was behind us, and we were moving forward. I felt lighter, happier. The cracks in our foundation had been sealed, I thought. I was so focused on patching things up, on believing the narrative he was selling me, that I failed to notice the small inconsistencies. The way he now took his phone into the bathroom with him when he showered. The way he'd started clearing his browser history religiously, something he never used to bother with. The credit card bill was set to autopay, and I usually only gave it a cursory glance. It was a joint account, but his work expenses were so numerous and complex, flights, client dinners, hotels, that I had long ago stopped trying to parse every single line item. I trusted him to manage it. It was a mistake that would soon blow my carefully reconstructed world apart. Because while I was busy designing buildings with solid foundations, the foundation of my own life was crumbling beneath my feet, and I was about to find the proof in black and white. The end of the month was always a busy time for me, both at work and at home. At the office, project deadlines loomed. At home, I handled our finances. It was a system we'd developed early on. I was meticulous and detail-oriented, while Julian had a more big-picture approach to money, which was a polite way of saying he was terrible at tracking his spending. I would sit down on the last Sunday of each month, a cup of tea in hand, and go through our accounts, categorizing expenses and making sure everything was in order. It was a routine, almost meditative task. This particular Sunday was about 2 weeks after our anniversary. The weekend getaway Julian had promised was booked, and things between us felt stable, almost idyllic. I logged into our joint credit card account, expecting nothing out of the ordinary. His usual flurry of expenses was there. Exorbitant client dinners at steakhouses, Uber receipts from late nights, a charge for a new set of golf clubs he'd claimed was a networking necessity. I scanned down the list, my eyes glazing over the familiar names of restaurants and retailers, and then I saw it. It was a single line item, nestled between a charge for office supplies and a lunch meeting. The date was October 15th, the date of our anniversary. The merchant was the Serenity Hotel and Spa. The amount was $458.72. I stared at the screen, my heart giving a sudden, painful lurch. The Serenity Hotel. I knew it. It was a chic, upscale boutique hotel downtown, known for its luxurious rooms and discreet service. It wasn't a place you stayed at for a business trip, not when your company had corporate accounts with major chains near the airport. It was a place for romantic getaways, for special occasions, or for something else entirely. My first thought was that it was a mistake. A fraudulent charge, maybe, but the name of the hotel sparked a flicker of a memory. Hadn't Julian mentioned a colleague staying there recently? Maybe he'd covered the cost for them, a corporate expense he'd be reimbursed for. I tried to reason it away, to find a logical explanation that didn't involve the ugly thoughts that were beginning to bubble up from the pit of my stomach. He had been at the office all night. He told me. He was exhausted. He couldn't. My hands were trembling slightly as I picked up my phone. I needed to call him to ask him about it directly. A simple question, a simple explanation. But something stopped me. A small, cold voice of intuition in the back of my mind whispered, "Don't let him know you know." Not yet. If I confronted him and he was innocent, I would look like a jealous, untrusting wife. But if he was guilty, confronting him now would only give him the chance to lie, to cover his tracks, to make me believe I was crazy. He was good at that. He could talk his way out of anything. I closed the banking app and took a few deep, ragged breaths, trying to calm the frantic beating of my heart. I was an architect. I dealt with facts, with blueprints, with tangible evidence. I needed more than just a single suspicious line item. I needed proof. The date, October 15th. He had told me he was at his office, a skyscraper in the financial district. The Serenity Hotel was a 20-minute cab ride away, in a completely different part of the city. Why would there be a hotel charge on that night? The pieces didn't fit. The story he had sold me, the all-night work emergency, the chaotic deal, the utter exhaustion, suddenly felt thin, flimsy, like a poorly constructed facade. My mind raced. I needed more information. I opened my laptop again, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I went to the Serenity Hotel's website. I clicked on their rooms and suites page. The standard rooms started around $350 a night. A suite would be more. I looked at the charge again, $458.72. The price seemed too specific. It wasn't just a room. It was a room plus something else. Room service, maybe. A bottle of champagne from the minibar? The thought made me feel physically ill. Was he celebrating our anniversary, just not with me? I felt a surge of nausea and ran to the bathroom, leaning over the toilet bowl, but nothing came up. There was just a hollow, aching emptiness inside me. When I splashed cold water on my face and looked in the mirror, the woman staring back at me was a stranger. Her eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and dawning horror. Her face was pale. The confident, composed architect was gone, replaced by a woman whose world was tilting on its axis. I walked back to my desk on unsteady legs. I needed an ally. I needed someone who could see this clearly, without the emotional fog that was clouding my judgment. I needed my best friend. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over the contact for Maria. Maria wasn't just my friend since college. She was a private investigator. She dealt with secrets and lies for a living. She would know what to do. She would know how to find the truth. With a deep breath that felt like a sob, I pressed the call button. When she answered with her usual cheerful, "Hey, you," I couldn't form any words. A choked, strangled sound was all that came out. "Candy?" she asked, her voice instantly changing, laced with concern. "What is it? What's wrong?" I finally found my voice, but it was a broken whisper. "Maria," I said, "I think Julian is cheating on me." Maria was at my apartment within the hour, a thermos of what she called emergency tea in one hand and a look of grim determination on her face. She didn't offer platitudes or hugs. She just sat down across from me at the dining table, pushed a mug into my hands, and said, "Okay, start from the beginning, tell me everything." And so I did. I told her about the forgotten anniversary, the flimsy excuse about a work emergency, the cold bed, and the strangely scented hug the next day. I pulled up the credit card statement on my laptop and pointed to the line item from the Serenity Hotel. Maria listened intently, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She didn't interrupt, just nodded occasionally, her expression unreadable. When I finished, the silence in the room was heavy with unspoken fears. "You were right not to confront him," she said finally, her voice calm and professional. It was the voice she used with clients, and strangely, it was exactly what I needed. It grounded me, pulling me out of the emotional spiral. Confrontation without irrefutable proof is a rookie mistake. It just teaches the liar to be a better liar. "So what do I do?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I feel like I'm going crazy. What if I'm wrong? What if there's a perfectly logical explanation for all of this?" "Maybe there is," Maria said, though her tone suggested she didn't believe it for a second. "But hope is not a strategy. We need data. We need to build a case just like you would design a building. We start with the foundation. The hotel charge is our cornerstone." She leaned forward, all business. "Okay, first things first. We need more than just a charge. We need to know who the room was booked for and if he was with someone. I have a contact who works in hotel security." It's a long shot, but he might be able to pull security footage from the lobby for that night. It'll cost you, but it would be definitive. Do it, I said without hesitation. The cost didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was the truth. Good, Maria nodded. Next, we look for other breadcrumbs. You said he's been protective of his phone lately? I nodded. And he clears his browser history? Religiously, I confirmed. Okay, that's amateur stuff. People forget about the cloud, Maria said with a wry smile. You share a family plan for your phones, right? And a home Wi-Fi network? I confirmed that we did. Perfect. I'm going to walk you through how to check his synced data. We're looking for location history, backed-up photos, deleted messages that might still be on the server. It feels invasive, I know. But he gave up his right to privacy when he decided to lie to you on your 10th wedding anniversary. Over the next few days, I became a reluctant spy in my own. Home, guided by Maria's late-night texts and emails, I delved into the digital life Julian had tried so hard to hide. It was a sickening, heart-wrenching process. The first crack in his story came from his phone's location data. On the night of our anniversary, his phone hadn't been at his office building all night. There was a clear path, his office, then a 20-minute gap, then a solid 6-hour block where his phone was located at the precise address of the Serenity Hotel. After that, it moved to a location a few blocks away, an all-night parking garage, where it stayed until just before he texted me the next morning. His story of pulling an all-nighter in his cubicle was a complete fabrication. He had been at that hotel. The knowledge hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. I had to sit down on the floor of my home office, my head in my hands, as waves of betrayal and fury washed over me. He had looked me in the eyes and lied. He had let me feel guilty for being disappointed. The man I had shared my life with for 15 years was a stranger. The next breadcrumb was even more damning. Maria helped me access our shared cloud account, where photos from both our phones were automatically backed up. Tucked away in a recently deleted folder he must have forgotten to permanently erase were a handful of pictures. They were selfies, taken in a dimly lit, stylishly decorated room that was unmistakably a hotel suite. Julian was in them, grinning, looking happier, and more relaxed than I had seen him in months. And he wasn't alone. In every photo, he had his arm wrapped around a young woman. She was beautiful, with long, dark hair and a bright, confident smile. I didn't recognize her at first, but after a few minutes of staring at her face, a cold dread washed over me. I had seen her before. It was at Julian's company holiday party last year. She was a junior employee from another department. Isabel. I remembered Julian introducing us briefly. She had been deferential, calling me ma'am, and I hadn't given her a second thought. Now, here she was, in a hotel room with my husband on our anniversary, wearing a slinky dress and looking at him with an expression of pure adoration. One photo, in particular, made me want to smash my laptop against the wall. It was a picture of their hands, intertwined on a table. Next to them was a champagne flute and a small plate with a single slice of chocolate lava cake, a lit candle stuck in the middle. He was celebrating with her. 2 days later, Maria called. I have it, she said, her voice low. My contact came through. I'm sending you the file now. Brace yourself. An email popped into my inbox. It contained a short video clip. It was grainy, time-stamped from the evening of October 15th, and clearly taken from a security camera pointed at the hotel's check-in desk. I clicked play, my heart pounding against my ribs, and there he was, Julian. He was standing at the counter, credit card in hand. And next to him, clinging to his arm, was Isabel. They were laughing about something, looking for all the world like a happy couple on a romantic getaway. He leaned down and kissed her, a long, lingering kiss that was filled with an intimacy that made my stomach churn. That was it. That was the irrefutable proof, the cornerstone of his lies and the foundation of my new reality. I closed the laptop. The image of their kiss burned into my brain. The grief I had been holding back finally broke through, a raw, primal wave of pain. I cried until I had no tears left, mourning the man I thought I had married, the life I thought we had built. But as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across my perfectly designed living room, the grief slowly began to recede, and in its place something else began to grow. It was cold, hard, and sharp. It was rage. And with it came a clarity I hadn't felt in months. He had demolished our marriage. Now, it was my turn to draw up the plans for his ruin. The week that followed the discovery was the strangest of my life. On the outside, I was the perfect wife. I went with Julian on our makeup anniversary trip to the bed and breakfast upstate. I smiled as we went on hikes, held his hand as we browsed antique shops, and let him kiss me goodnight. But on the inside, I was a different person. The love and warmth I once felt for him had been replaced by a cold, calculating fury. Every smile was a lie, every touch a performance. I was an architect, and I was now engaged in the most important design project of my life, the systematic deconstruction of Julian's world. He had no idea he was living with a demolition expert. While he slept, I was awake, my mind a whirlwind of plans and strategies. Maria became my co-conspirator, my structural engineer in this endeavor. We had a secret weapon, Julian's arrogance. He was so confident in his own cleverness, so certain of my naive trust, that he had grown sloppy. He believed his own lies, which made him predictable and vulnerable. Our first step, Maria advised, was to protect me. Before you blow anything up, you need to make sure you're standing outside the blast zone, she said during one of our hushed late-night calls. We need to get your finances in order. Under the guise of planning for a long-term investment, I began the process of separating our assets. I opened a new bank account in my name only. I met with a financial advisor, one Maria vetted, and started moving my personal savings and half of our joint liquid assets into it. It was a slow, methodical process that required Julian's signature on a few documents. I told him they were for a low-risk mutual fund I wanted to invest in for our retirement. He barely glanced at them, too busy with his work and his secret life to pay attention to the details. His carelessness was my greatest asset. While securing my finances, I continued to gather intelligence with Maria's guidance. The enemy in this case was twofold, Julian and Isabel. I needed to understand their connection, their vulnerabilities. Julian's weakness was his career. His entire identity was tied to his status as a brilliant, ruthless investment banker. His firm, a prestigious, old money institution, had a strict code of conduct. A scandal, especially one involving an affair with a junior employee from a partner firm, could be catastrophic for his reputation and his career trajectory. Isabel's weakness, I discovered, was her ambition. Maria did a deep dive into her background. She was a paralegal at a law firm that handled a lot of compliance work for Julian's bank. She was smart, driven, and desperate to climb the social and professional ladder. Julian, a senior banker, was her golden ticket. She wasn't just in a relationship with him, she was leveraging him. I found emails between them, uncovered from a deep dive into our home network data, that made this sickeningly clear. She would ask for advice on certain legal cases that overlapped with his bank's interests, and he would provide insights that bordered on insider information. He was so infatuated, so eager to impress her, that he was becoming reckless. This was my angle. This was the structural weakness I could exploit. The plan began to take shape, a multi-phased blueprint for revenge. Phase 1 was quiet and internal, securing my own future. Phase 2 was about information control. I meticulously compiled every piece of evidence: the hotel receipt, the location data, the photos from the cloud, the security camera footage from the hotel lobby, and copies of the incriminating emails between Julian and Isabel. I saved everything to a secure, encrypted hard drive that I kept in a safe deposit box. This was my insurance policy. Phase 3 was the most complex, designing the perfect detonation. I didn't want a simple, messy confrontation. I didn't want to just leave him. That would be too easy. He deserved to feel the same public humiliation and professional ruin that he had been so willing to inflict on our private life. He had built his world on a foundation of lies, and I was going to expose every single one of them, bringing the entire structure crashing down around him. The perfect opportunity presented itself in an email invitation. Julian's firm was hosting its annual awards gala in a month's time. It was a major event, attended by the entire senior leadership, key clients, and industry press. Julian was slated to receive the Banker of the Year award, a huge honor that would solidify his path to a partnership. He was immensely proud of it, preening about it for weeks. He had already asked me to pick out a show-stopping dress. It was the perfect stage. My revenge wouldn't be a quiet conversation in our living room, it would be a public spectacle. Maria thought the plan was bold, almost cinematic. "Are you sure you want to do this?" she asked, her voice laced with a mix of admiration and concern. "Once you press this button, there's no going back." I looked at the file of evidence on my computer screen, the smiling faces of my husband and his mistress. "He didn't worry about going back when he checked into that hotel on our anniversary," I said, my voice cold and steady. "He made his choice. Now he gets to live with the consequences. I'm just the architect of those consequences." For the next month, I played the part of the proud, supportive wife. I helped Julian practice his acceptance speech. I went with him to get his tuxedo fitted. I bought the most stunning evening gown I could find. I was calm, focused, and patient. I was a builder, and I knew that demolition required the same level of precision and planning as construction. The charges had to be set in exactly the right places to ensure the whole thing came down exactly as planned. And I had found all the load-bearing walls. The night of the gala was electric. The ballroom of a five-star hotel, ironically, a rival to the Serenity, was filled with the city's financial elite. Men in crisp tuxedos and women in glittering gowns mingled, their laughter echoing off the crystal chandeliers. Julian was in his element, gliding through the crowd with a glass of champagne in his hand, shaking hands, and accepting premature congratulations. He looked handsome, confident, and completely oblivious. He held my hand tightly, introducing me as my beautiful, brilliant wife, Candace, to anyone who would listen. The hypocrisy was so thick I could taste it. I smiled, played my part, and felt nothing but ice in my veins. Isabel was there, too. I spotted her across the room, standing with a group of other junior associates from her law firm. She was wearing a daring red dress, her eyes constantly scanning the crowd, searching for Julian. Our eyes met for a fleeting second, and she gave me a small, almost pitying smile before looking away. She thought I was a fool. She had no idea who she was dealing with. The first part of my plan had been set in motion hours earlier. I had packaged the evidence, the photos, the emails detailing their inappropriate professional correspondence, a short, edited video of the hotel security footage, into a neat, professional-looking digital portfolio. I'd sent it from an anonymous, encrypted email address to two key groups of people, scheduled to arrive in their inboxes at precisely 9:00 p.m., right in the middle of the awards ceremony. The first group was the board of directors and the entire senior partnership of Julian's firm, including the notoriously strict, old-school CEO, a man named Arthur Kensington, who had a zero-tolerance policy for scandals that could tarnish the bank's pristine reputation. The second group was the managing partners at Isabel's law firm, along with their head of compliance. I had drafted the accompanying email carefully, framing it as a concerned whistleblower, exposing a serious ethical breach and a potential compliance issue that could put both firms at risk. I didn't make it about the cheating. I made it about the professional misconduct, the sharing of sensitive information, the reckless behavior of a senior executive. The affair was just the sordid, unprofessional context. At 8:45 p.m., the dinner service concluded and the awards ceremony began. Julian squeezed my hand under the table as the CEO, Mr. Kensington, took the stage to present the final award of the night, Banker of the Year. "This year's recipient," Kensington began, his voice booming through the ballroom, "is a man who exemplifies dedication, innovation, and a relentless drive for success. He has broken every record and has become an invaluable asset to this firm. It is my great honor to present this award to Mr. Julian Croft." The room erupted in applause. Julian stood up, straightened his tie, and gave me a quick, triumphant kiss on the cheek. "Wish me luck," he whispered, his eyes shining with pride. "You don't need it," I said, my voice even. He walked toward the stage, shaking hands as he went, a king accepting his crown. As he reached the stage and took the heavy crystal award from Kensington, I watched the head table. I saw Kensington's executive assistant lean in and discreetly show him something on her phone. A flicker of confusion crossed Kensington's face, then it hardened into a dark, thunderous scowl. He subtly signaled to another board member, who also checked his phone. I could see the ripple effect starting. Phones began to light up discreetly at the senior partners' tables. The atmosphere in the room, once celebratory, was beginning to shift. A low murmur started to spread. Julian, basking in the spotlight on stage, was oblivious. He tapped the microphone and began his pre-rehearsed speech. "Thank you, Arthur. Thank you to the board. I am truly humbled and honored." He spoke of hard work, of late nights at the office, of the sacrifices required for success. At that moment, as he mentioned sacrifice, I stood up from my seat. It wasn't a dramatic, chair-scraping motion. It was quiet, deliberate, and it drew every eye in the room. I picked up my clutch, took one last look at my husband on stage, his face now a mask of confusion at my interruption, and began to walk toward the exit. I didn't run. I walked with the unhurried, confident stride of an architect surveying a completed project. My path took me directly past Isabel's table. I saw the color drain from her face as she saw me coming. Her colleagues were all whispering, looking at their phones and then at her. She had clearly just received a frantic text or email. Her golden ticket had just been voided. I paused for a moment beside her chair and leaned in, my voice a low, calm whisper for her ears only. "The next time you decide to build your career on another woman's marriage," I said, "make sure she isn't the one who designed the building. She knows exactly where to place the charges." Then I continued my walk, leaving her frozen in a state of pure, unadulterated awe. "Nick," by the time I reached the grand doors of the ballroom, Julian had faltered in his speech. His voice trailed off as he watched me leave, the applause dying down into a sea of confused and concerned whispers. He had his award in his hand, but his career, his reputation, and his entire world had just been condemned. I didn't look back. I pushed the doors open and walked out into the cool night air, leaving the demolition site behind me. The aftermath was exactly as I had designed it, swift, brutal, and contained. I didn't stick around to watch the building fall. I went straight from the gala to a hotel, a different one, of course, where I had booked a suite for the week. I turned off my phone, ordered room service, and for the first time in months, slept a deep, dreamless sleep. I didn't need to hear from Julian. I didn't need his frantic calls, his pathetic excuses, or his rage-filled texts. The message had been delivered publicly and irrevocably. Maria kept me updated, acting as my eyes and ears. The fallout at the gala, she told me, had been spectacular. Julian had been escorted off the stage by security at the request of Mr. Kensington himself. He was placed on immediate, indefinite leave the next morning, pending an internal investigation, which was corporate speak for find a way to fire him without getting sued. His Banker of the Year award was quietly rescinded. The photos of him and Isabel, along with the emails hinting at professional misconduct, had spread through the firm and the wider financial community like wildfire. He was a pariah. His reputation, the thing he valued more than anything, more than me, more than our marriage, was in ashes. Isabel fared no better. Her law firm, terrified of the compliance implications and the damage to their relationship with Julian's bank, fired her the following day for gross professional misconduct. Her ambition had led her straight to the unemployment line. She had gambled on Julian and lost spectacularly. When I finally turned my phone back on a few days later, it was a war zone of notifications. Hundreds of missed calls and texts from Julian, oscillating between desperate apologies, furious accusations, and pitiful pleas for me to just talk to him. There were also messages from his family, from our mutual friends, all asking what had happened. I ignored them all and sent a single, simple text to Julian: "All future communication will be through my lawyer." I had already retained the best divorce attorney in the city, recommended by Maria. The divorce was surprisingly fast. Julian, stripped of his professional standing and facing a morals clause violation in his employment contract, had no fight left in him. His arrogance had been replaced by a hollowed-out desperation. When he was finally, officially fired from his firm a month later, losing millions in unvested stock options, he became completely compliant. He agreed to all my terms. I got the condo, the home I had designed and loved, and more than half of our remaining assets. By the time the ink was dry on the divorce papers, he was a ghost of the man I had married. I saw him once, months later, across the street in a coffee shop. He looked older, smaller. The tailored suit was gone, replaced by jeans and a worn-out sweater. The confident swagger was gone. He was just a man, stripped of his power and prestige. He didn't see me, and I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, not even a flicker of the love I once had. He was simply a part of a design that had failed, a structure that had been condemned and cleared away to make room for something new. For me, life began again. The demolition was complete, and now it was time for the redesign. I threw myself into my work with a renewed passion and clarity. I led the museum project to a successful and celebrated completion. My firm, impressed with my leadership and vision, offered me a junior partnership. I sold the condo, not because it held bad memories, but because I wanted a completely fresh blueprint. I bought a beautiful old brownstone in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood and began the slow, joyful process of renovating it, designing a space that was entirely my own. My relationship with Maria, forged in the fire of betrayal, became stronger than ever. She was my rock, my co-conspirator, my family. We had a standing weekly dinner where we would drink wine and laugh about the absurdity of it all. "You know," she said to me one evening as we sat on the deck of my half-finished new house, "most people just throw a vase, you demolished a skyscraper." I smiled, a genuine, easy smile. "I'm an architect," I said. "I believe in structural integrity." His was rotten to the core. It's been 2 years now. I am a partner at my firm. I live in a home I rebuilt from the studs up. My life is full, not with the superficial gloss of success that Julian and I chased, but with real, solid things. Meaningful work, true friendship, and a quiet, unshakable sense of my own strength. I learned that some foundations aren't worth saving. Sometimes, the most creative act is to tear it all down and start again, with a better design and a stronger foundation, built to last.